Meeting to order, and in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. I don't have it in front of me.
It's on your tablet.
Oh, well, I know, but it isn't up yet.
Oh,
So, sorry.
It's posted.
you have
Just
it
tell
there
them
to
it's posted.
sign.
It's posted in the council chambers. Madam Clerk, a current copy of the act is available at this meeting. Madam Clerk, can you call roll, please?
Augustine Schulte,
Here.
Barr,
Here?
Hemer,
Here.
Jablonski,
Here.
Creashaw, Lohr,
Here.
Roth,
Here.
Schilling.
Here.
Council President Augustine Schulte, the roll has been called.
Thank you. Our first item on the agenda tonight is to amend the proposed schedule of fees for the rescue service to provide am I in the right place?
Yes.
This sounds different than what I was reading at home. To provide a fee for lift assist calls for private residents at a charge of $150 for third and subsequent calls per calendar year. Mrs. Vasicek, are you going to speak on this one?
I can overview it if you'd like. If you have further questions, I'll defer to Ryan. But basically, the fire department EMS guys, EMTs go out on a lot of lift assist calls. I told you all that I'm rotating my work location, and a couple Fridays ago, I was at the fire station all day, and I think 7 calls came in, and 4 were lift assists. And we're not getting any revenue from those most of the time. So I just asked Ryan to look into it a little bit. So we're going to make sure we're charging facilities what our fee schedule says exist in its existing state, and then add this for private residents. It's comparable to what other communities are doing. So if you have any further questions, I'll let Ryan answer.
The amount for, not individual calls, but for facilities, is that and I thought I was reading it at 350, is that correct for
That's correct. Any lift assist calls to those facilities would be at $350 per incident.
All right, and
charge.
it's the facility that pays or it's not, or does it depend on the facility if they're gonna charge
I think they have the option to pass that charge to the resident. The problem with the facilities is we have quite a few that are no lift facilities, which means if a patient in their care falls, their primary response is to call the fire department for that service. They have a policy in place that they will not lift that patient. So the thought behind the additional charge, which again is comparable to our other cities, is if they're being paid to provide that care to that patient and they're calling us to provide their service for them, we're a subcontractor at that point.
exactly?
So that's where the difference between 150 to 350 for the facilities comes from.
That makes perfect sense.
Ryan, are we billing the insurance companies for this, Medicare?
Yes, they
Medicaid?
should. Well, currently we're not billing anyone, but it would go through our billing company, and that's something that I'm working with now is our billing company, Quick Med Claims, to make sure that, especially once this is approved, to make sure we're capturing the appropriate information required for billing and that we are billing for it. So it would go just like our EMS billing would go to their insurance.
Good. Thank you.
And it's not meant to punish anyone, but there are cases where we're going to the same location over and over and over again for the same thing. So other cities, they're charging regardless of instance. They're charging every single time. Tara and I went back and forth on what's reasonable, and that's when we came up with the 2 free per year and then the charge for third and consecutive within a calendar year.
Chief, we currently log those as active calls when they go out, as our tally goes up throughout the year.
Yes.
Even if they don't get paid for them.
Yes.
There's a private provider in town that charges for lift assists. I think we should as well.
I agree.
No opinion. I don't think we should. I mean,
So
have a grace period.
yeah, and there, like I said, we kind of went back and forth on that. You know, there's a part of me who feels, the heart part of me who feels, okay, you fall once a year, you need some. That is what we are here to do, to help people. But I could also go the other way and say, you know what, it costs money to do this. and here's the charge. And there are cities that do that. Like I said, there's so many systems, you know, from I talked to all the chiefs in the state, and they have it to where charge per incident, charge based on incidents per week, months, calendar year. And I thought all that was just going to be too much to manage and figure out. So I agree. I think the simplest and would be to charge all, but
I read where it could take 2 crews.
absolutely.
For lift assist. And meanwhile, we have somebody across town that having a heart attack or something like that, pays their taxes.
Yes.
They get charged.
Yes,
This individual should as well. It's a minimal fee,
I would agree.
and more than likely it would be Medicare, Medicaid.
Sure.
That's my personal opinion.
Anybody else have a,
See if he wants to amend it.
do you want to amend? Does anybody, would you prefer to amend
You want to
it?
make that and amend it?
Or would you like to
Okay.
leave it as
Yeah,
is?
I feel the same way with him. I just, you know,
Yes,
I support that.
yes, I would like to amend it for all calls. Unless somebody'd rather give 1 grace period, but, personally, I feel they should be charged.
Is that a recommendation?
you want that in motion? Yeah, I'll second that. That's,
Well, if we're ready for a motion, I'll put it in a motion
Yeah.
form.
So what we want to do is we want to recommend the approval to amend the proposed schedule fees to provide no free lift.
I would say a fee of $150 for all lift assist calls.
yeah.
To private residents,
For
yes.
private residents.
All right. Is that getting, oh, we don't have a Neil here. Is that adequate to just make the motion in that way?
Yeah.
There?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, very
Because
good.
then it'd come up in the council meeting, I think.
Sure, very good, okay. So do we have a second for that,
We had a second.
Ron? Okay. All right, is any other discussion then? All right, then we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay.
Why surprise?
Oh, where's my cursor? There it is.
Mark it on your calendars. You all were more stringent than me.
I'm just hoping I don't fall down.
If you fall, carry your Visa card.
I guess. What is that?
I'm not falling.
What is that little thing that you have that you can, your
Life
life
alert?
light?
Your life
Your
light,
lifeline?
Yeah.
Lifeline?
Life alert.
Help me, I'm falling but can't get up.
That's right. All right, the next item, motion passed. Thank you. All right, very good, thank you. All right, we're gonna on to the next item then, which is the pay plan. Mrs. Vasicek, do you have anything you want to share with us on this?
It's not any different from what we discussed at the last meeting. This represents an 8% cost of living adjustment for all of our positions. And then those positions that we are adding or adjusting over this next fiscal year are included here. So like the park and rec maintenance worker, the public information officer, the community coordinator, those are all here as well. Where we discussed they would fall at in the pay plan. Other than that, it's what we've discussed previously. If you have any questions.
Council members, any questions or comments?
Well, I would move to recommend approval of the pay plan as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and all in favor vote aye, those opposed nay. Okay, and motion passes, thank you. Our next item on the agenda then is capital improvement plan. And Mrs. Vasicek?
Yes. This is all printed out for you, as I know it's easier to see when you have it in print in front of you. There were a few adjustments made. I gave an overview of those couple of adjustments in an email correspondence to all of you. So those were, in addition to those, which were the master planning of Pawnee Park and the Memorial Stadium, and then Girard Park, taking out the concrete work that we were going to do and instead doing a master plan for that area. We also had to increase the amount in next fiscal year for a carryover project, the family slide at the aquatic center, or the plunge, excuse me. Other than that, the only other change was that the fire department, we adjusted some of the radio numbers. So previously there was one line on line 21 that was just radio improvements, and it was $250,000. We broke that into two separate radio related things that total that same amount. So you can see 21 is radios, vehicle portable and in-vehicle repeaters, and then 22 is digital repeaters. So capital improvement wise, if you guys have questions or if you want me to go through this, but it is, otherwise it is the same as it was the last time we had committee of the whole on August 1st. Ron?
I have just a couple of, I need explanation, I guess.
Sure.
More so than, or knowing why.
Somebody
On
in this room will be able to help you.
What's that?
Somebody in here will be able to help you answer your
Hope so.
question.
It's not, probably not difficult, but anyway, on, line 63, downtown UP grade separation study, 300,000.
Yes.
Haven't we done that already?
So what we're doing presently is kind of phase one of the downtown grade separation. So we're looking at options. Wilson's putting together all of that information. We actually, Rick and I have a meeting with them this week or early next week, this week, so that we can overview those options and come up with a plan for Wilson and company to come to committee of the whole and present where we're at. But the next phase of that project is that we start on plans, we get cost estimates, we figure out impacts, all of those things. So it's not going to be complete this fiscal year. It'll
I gotcha.
continue in order to develop more information.
The next step.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then also, on, 66, change the traffic control downtown.
That is, the description got cut, but it's changes to traffic control all over town. So we had, it says downtown study, comma, I can pull up my Excel sheet and look at the full note, but it's anywhere in town. So for example, over the last couple of years, we have spent a pretty considerable amount of money and time redoing timing, like at 27th and 33rd and 33rd and 38th and 33rd and Lost Creek Parkway and 18th Avenue, so we have, and some of those things require equipment improvements and studies or traffic counts, those types of things. So as we continue to grow and traffic patterns change, we felt like we need some money in the budget in order to accommodate those things more quickly, because sometimes they're pricey and we're having to delay things that really we should be getting done a little quicker, in our opinion. So really that's what it's for. The downtown study, the reason that's specifically listed is there is quite a bit of conversation around the downtown study about the lights and how the lights are used and the traffic direction and how that might be adjusted with if there's a viaduct and where the viaduct would be and all those things. So there's even conversation about maybe changing the lights to red flashing, so it creates a four-way stop sort of environment, to see if that will slow traffic down in downtown. Through the study, we've heard a lot of people speed down 13th Street. Well, I am not a saint, and I will tell you that if I am in a rush and it starts counting down, I may accelerate a little bit in order to beat, right, the yellow light. And I think every single person that goes down there does the same thing. So that creates an environment where people are speeding up right where we want them to drive safely and slowly and be cognizant of pedestrians and have the environment be pedestrian friendly. So what we've created infrastructure wise is doing the opposite of what we want the environment to be like, pedestrian friendly. So those conversations are happening. So that's why downtown is specifically listed here.
Okay.
But of course, we would come to committee of the whole with any changes, or council with any changes. It would go to traffic control first. All of those, we'd still go through all of those hoops before we make any adjustments.
I have, and maybe I don't know, maybe it'll show up in the budget or something, but and I'm probably kind of fuzzy in the way I'm remembering this now. When we were looking at putting together capital projects and budget, we had at the end of it, you had, this is how much dollars this is coming up to. We need to come up with a way, or how are we gonna come up with this amount of money
Yep.
to balance this out? What are we gonna cut? Where are we gonna add revenue? Okay. So, and I guess when I look at this, I'm like, so what ended up happening?
So that's an operation and maintenance conversation.
Okay.
That deficit was in O&M. It is not in capital.
Okay,
Capital in Columbus is funded strictly by sales tax,
Right,
right?
okay.
So we put our CIP together based on how much sales tax we get. So that deficit conversation that we had was O&M, and
Okay.
I will get to it.
and that's coming
Yes.
in up in budget then,
Yep.
correct? All right,
Yep.
just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, are there any other?
Terry, yes, line item 70, it says it's 170,000. But over in the 23 budget, it jumps to 1.7 million. Is that just a misprint, or is that?
No, that's correct. It's the same up on 68.
Right.
And 67. And the reason I did that is to show you all how much value that project engineer and our city engineer are adding to our budget. Because if we didn't have engineers on staff that could do that design work, that's approximately how much we would be spending in order to get those projects designed. So we're doing that in-house, and then the big numbers out in the future year is actual construction. That's why.
Thank you. They said you never did anything.
Anything else?
And we do have a applicant and successful, and so we'll have our project engineer in January. February now. February. Keeps getting pushed.
All right,
We're
do
excited
we,
about that.
do we have a motion, or are there any
I
other
don't-
questions?
I think it's really just
Can
discussion.
we have a motion?
Make the recommendation to approval of the capital improvement plan as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and cast your vote. And our motion passes. All right, and that takes us down to the budget.
So if you wanna, you can transfer it to me, yeah. It's not very clear, but you have the attachment as well if you wanna open up that next attachment. Heather helped me, did most of the gathering of all of this information, put it all together, and we wanted to overview the budget in a way that's a little easier to understand, and also a way that when this is all done, and if this is the final budget, we can put this on our website. It can be out there for the general public to see. We can use these pieces for education. So I appreciate Heather putting that extra effort in this year. But Really, this is an overview. This page is an overview of what we've accomplished this year. Very high level. Of course, it does not cover everything. So the community building project, which is our library, city hall, arts council, children's museum, and the coffee shop, is moving right along. It's on schedule and on budget, and we're excited about that. So this time next year, we will be in that new building. The expansion of the city fiber optic network, so we're in phase 2, which is about complete, which connects many of our parks and public facilities to our fiber ring that the city has. So we'll make providing services and providing Wi-Fi, having better cameras with better not so pixelated views. All of those things will make it possible to really up our game in a lot of areas. So we're excited about that. Fire station number 2, Charlie Lewis Station, that renovation and addition is underway and was started this year. Will be finished next year. Pawnee Park baseball field lighting replacement. Continuation of the citywide trail system. If you have driven out on Lost Creek Parkway, they hydroseeded yesterday on Labor Day. So that is very good. It moved along very quickly and will be a really nice addition. Pawnee Plunge Family Water Slide. I kind of talked about that in the CIP, that will carry over to next year too, but will be a really nice improvement to the plunge. All holes at the Quail Run Golf Course were reopened this year after a few years of being out of commission because of the 2019 flood. 33rd Avenue Viaduct uplighting became a bigger project than any of us anticipated, but that is done, and I get compliments on it all the time. Lots of really great feedback, so a really good project. Kudos to Chuck and Rick for getting that done. The downtown study will be complete this year, so it'll master plan a lot of really great downtown things to come, and it'll be a plan that staff and I really work hard to implement. So we're excited about that. Major arterial roadways were reconstructed. East 14th Avenue is in its punch list phase, 48th Avenue, 15th Street. So lots of really good progress made by staff. The next page is just an overview of the assessed valuation. So you can see here, especially in the last 5 years, there's been a pretty rapid rise in the assessed valuation. And just, I know you all know this, but for the record, this is value set by the county assessor. We have no say, no bearing on these numbers, but this year up 6.5%. If you guys have questions, please just interrupt me and ask them. This next graph is the levy rate comparison. I think it's valuable for all of you to see that we are on the low end. We work hard to stay there, you know, but sometimes there are compromises that are made in order to maintain that level. So we are number 4 from the bottom here. And just as a reminder, go ahead.
I'm just curious. So how does Kearney keep their levy so much lower? I mean, where are they incurring? Where are they getting their other money if they're keeping their?
They have a very high sales tax because
okay.
their trade area is basically all of eastern Nebraska up until the Norfolk trade area. So they are,
Okay.
you know, they have a very wide reach with their retail.
Okay.
They have a
Makes sense.
university, you know, they're just, yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Let's jump to the next one, 2021 property tax levy. So I think it's really valuable for everyone to know this, but I gave the same presentation at Park Board at noon today, and I saw some wide eyes, like they just did not know. just pretend like the pie is $100, and for every $100 you pay in property tax, this is where it goes. So for every $100 you all pay, $16 of it comes to the city, and with that we provide fire, police, parks, cemetery, library. I mean, tons of stuff, lots of value for that, I believe, and we do a great job of providing that. You can see school is 65 of every $100, county 10, college 5, NRD, ESU, Ag Society, all listed there. I do the Youth Leadership Columbus every year and talk about budget stuff if I'm available. And every time I talk to them, I say, you know, the city has $110 million budget. How much of that do you think is property tax revenue? They say 50%. and then when I tell them what it really is and I show them this, they're like, oh, gosh, I had no idea. So it just, I think, shows how little people really understand about municipal budgets. So it's eye-opening, but also how diversified our revenues have to be, because we can't rely on property tax like that. Our lid is 0.45. You saw in that graph, you can see a lot of cities are right at that lid. Unless you are voter approved, then you can go above that.
That's something that could be shared when you share the budget.
Yeah, we're going to put this on the website. Mm-hmm. City of Columbus sales tax. So you can see our sales tax also is slowly, well, not really slowly, it's pretty rapidly increasing. You will see that, again, as we always talk about, we're very conservative with how we budget. So even though we are estimating over $9 million, we are budgeting to receive 8.5 next year for sales tax.
One of the things I would like to see, and which is that, I don't know, what we budgeted this year was 7.9?
To spend in sales tax?
Yeah.
More than that. To receive or to spend?
No, what we spent. What was the budget that we set last year
For this fiscal year that we're in?
22?
It was like 8.9 million.
Okay. The difference between what we receive and that, I would like to know where that's spent.
It's not spent. We received we're estimated to receive 9.3. We budgeted to spend I'm pretty sure it was 8.9 million we budgeted last year. So that difference, that extra revenue, goes into the cash, on the cash line that you see every month. It's in that 1% and 0.5% sales tax. That's why that continues to grow. So when we do like this year, we're budgeting 8.5 of revenue, but we're budgeting capital improvement of 10.5 to spend because we have that reserve. So every year we add to the reserve, and every year we plan to spend some of the reserve.
I'm glad the first time was ever explained that way to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. No, I'm glad you asked.
Good. Yeah,
Any other questions about this one before we move on?
that's a good question, Ron.
Okay, general fund revenue. So you can see of 100% of the revenue we get, how it's distributed. Again, sales tax is big. The property tax is a big representative, 17%. All other taxes, so that's fuel, occupation taxes like, phone, cable, motor vehicle, all other revenues, that's bond proceeds and state and federal funds. And then other small pieces of the pie, Keno, charges for services.
A little bit from everybody, don't we?
Is that
All of
where
that.
casino would fall in, is under Keno?
It will be its own separate piece of the pie when that starts coming in. Yep. And that's, worth noting for the public is, if anybody asks, we are not budgeting to receive $1 of gaming revenue for this next fiscal year, because it's just
gonna
too much of, pardon my pun, but it's too much of a gamble for us to just, for us to guess, but then to plan to receive it if we don't receive it. So we will talk next year about what is received, by this time next year, and see how we want to budget it. It will be a a big conversation we have.
That-
Then,
Excuse me, this graphic is very nice.
Yes.
Needs one addition, in my opinion, and that is a total revenue
oh, okay.
somewhere on the thing. That says, yeah, all right.
All of them added together equals. Yes,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Good point.
The next is general fund operating expense.
Same comment.
Noted. The as we talk about pretty frequently, fire and police are the public safety is a large portion of what we spend general fund revenue on, but you can also see those other departments there. Any questions? Enterprise funds. So as you all know, the city basically operate 3 independent businesses, right? General fund, water, wastewater, transfer station, stormwater. And we don't commingle unless there's intentional, give a little bit from the general fund to the transfer station or help pay off the building. Those sorts of things happen, but this is how all enterprise funds are planned to, the expenses they're planned to have in this next fiscal year. You can see the mass majority of the expense is maintaining the systems. And then a look at, go ahead, John.
Tara, do any of the enterprise funds have I hesitate to use the word slush, but basically some extra money if something
Yes.
catastrophic goes wrong?
Absolutely. In that cash balance sheet you get every month, you'll see how much cash is in each of those funds. So
I'm
page,
noticing more and more of these things in other towns, where is it back east, the water supply has just been absolutely decimated because of flooding over areas that were burned down, and so they get all the floods into their reservoirs, but, and that's not to say that that wouldn't happen here, but there are other things that can happen.
absolutely. Yes, we have healthy reserves in water and wastewater. We're budgeting to spend a little bit of them on capital, but that's major capital things. So those funds will replenish. And this year in the budget, we have a rate study and water, I don't know what we called it, availability, future planning to make sure we know what's coming, what we can plan for, we have planned, and we know when those expenses are coming. New wells, that sort of
That's what
thing.
I'm gonna say, as we grow, we need to
Yep.
keep up with our water that we're
Exactly.
producing. Do we need another well, somewhere?
Exactly. That study that we're going to be doing this next fiscal year will tell us all of that. It'll tell us if we need another reservoir, if we continue to grow a certain direction. It will tell us a lot of things about how we can best plan for growth.
Might be easier to put a tower up out over
Yeah.
here instead of piping it all the way,
Yes, we will talk about all those things. And that's, something that we talked a little bit at Park Board at noon was that, Columbus we're growing significantly faster than most of our counterparts, which means we have to outlay a lot of very expensive infrastructure. Millions of dollars in roads, millions in dollars in water and sewer, that our comparable cities, who, by the way, have higher property tax levies, aren't really having to do at the same level we are because they're not growing as quickly. But the bad side about that is that you have to outlay those expenses before you have more revenue, right? So we just really have to be responsible about how we're growing, because we outlay millions of dollars for roadways, but then the subdivisions and the developments come 1, 2, 5 years later, and that's how we get more revenue and sales tax and all those things. So really just have to be fiscally responsible so we can continue on that trajectory. So next year, kind of talked about it in our CAP, but just a big picture overlook. We'll complete the community building project. We'll complete Charlie Lewis Station. Because we put in that second phase of backbone fiber, we will be able to add Wi-Fi to several city facilities, Frankfurt Square, Pawnee Park Stadium, and the baseball field, the Plunge, Girard Park will be a really nice amenity for staff and for visitors. Master park planning of Girard Park and Pawnee Park and Memorial Stadium. Girard Park court renovations, there is $1 million in the budget to get that moving. Community center entryway, or the senior center entryway reconstruction. Public safety departments will be working on radio improvements. There's $750,000, I believe, around that in the budget for radio improvements, and we're already starting to have meetings with emergency management, Platte County, and the state, the SRS system, about what the best plan is. You all approved a contract with Ray Freeman to help us just understand all of that and move forward. So that has already started. School and pedestrian crossing upgrades, Lost Creek Parkway sanitary sewer trunk main and transmission. Water will also be coming. The BRIC grant we were able to get, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Cities. So that is a FEMA grant that funding, a pool of funding for those was created because of the 2019 flood. So in 2019, we did very well. We were very fortunate as a community, but that was because we had done the maintenance. We had, we'd increased the levee. We had repaired the tow drains. We'd done all those things. I cannot imagine what would have happened had our systems not been recently renovated. So we just have to stay on top of those things. So the BRIC grant, we got $250,000 to do more flood resiliency planning. So we'll talk about big picture things like extending the levee, and we'll talk about smaller things like a gate here or pumps here and those things, so that when this happens again, because it will happen again, that we are a little bit better prepared and can be even more resilient when that next disaster comes. The last thing is just infrastructure expansion and reconstruction. So Highway 30 reconstruction is going to be officially starting. Right now it is starting, but next year is the official start of that 3-year project. And then our $2 million that we put in for citywide pavement improvements, and then East 23rd Street, 48th Avenue, and to 54th Avenue, and 48th Avenue down to Bradshaw Park. So again, lots of infrastructure and good park improvements, good investment in our public safety department. So it will be another good, busy year.
Tara, a nice addition to this, it's not a city project, but many people would think it is the viaduct, it sounds like, is going to start moving forward to ADM, which is the county project, which is just another piece of infrastructure within our community to help move traffic and to help as we grow.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's been another one that's been on the books for
a long time.
They thought they could get that done before we got ours done. Yeah. That was they were thinking, and all of a sudden, they run into some of the things that we ran into when we were trying to get ours going. So
right. So the last piece of, and it's not a slide in the budget presentation, is what Beth had brought up earlier when we had our August 1st committee of the whole. I talked about a deficit that we were looking at the operations and maintenance for the general fund, and we did have department heads, whether they were in the general fund or not, go back and take a second look, and we're able to find some cost savings, not $600,000 worth though. So we did that, and then we also decided that one of the cash line, well, the other thing is the hotel tax. So we have that ordinance on the first reading tonight, and that 4% will generate between $350,000 and $400,000 a year. So that will get us a lot closer. And I mentioned that at Park Board today, and all of them were excited about it and glad it's moving forward. No negative comments at all. And then the other thing is, Heather and I discussed at length taking loop reserves, So every year, much like sales tax, when we budget, we plan to receive $4 million. I'm just throwing out round numbers. $4 million from our lease with Loop, because we own the system. They pay us the 11%. If we receive 4.5, then $500,000 goes into our cash reserves, right? If we don't use it. Nice round numbers. So that cash reserve, that Loop reserve, has between $2.5 and $3 million in it right now. So what we're proposing to do is take the payment that we have to make on the City Hall portion of the new building, which is around $700,000, transferring it out of that cash and putting it as a revenue in O&M. So we're in the black then. Does that make sense? So the obviously light at the end of the tunnel when we talk about budget and these issues, we're growing rapidly. Our revenues aren't quite keeping up, but they are going to pick up, and the gaming and the racetrack and gaming, again, we have nothing in the budget for that. We do expect to start receiving that revenue, but for future budgets, that will be really nice to have, and we'll be able to adjust as we move forward. So that's the plan for this year. We'll be in the black around 500,000, I believe. So that is the plan for now. If you guys, do you have other questions or
I
thoughts?
do.
Yeah.
If and when they get started with the Ag Park Casino, they had talked about starting in December. Those fees, until we are ready to budget again next year, will go into cash reserves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will.
So hopefully, if they take off with as big a bang as they hope, there'll be a nice pot there when we get there.
Right. And if we're, 50% of the way through the budget and it's coming in strong and there's something, we may have a conversation mid-budget year. I'm not sure. We didn't put anything in the budget. So if it really comes in strong, we may have to look at if we need to do something, amend or anything like that. We can certainly amend the budget if we absolutely have to.
Because I think obviously everything's a projection that's come across so far, but they had projected somewhere in the range of 1.6 to 1.8 million a year, possibly out of
As a revenue?
for revenue to us. I mean, for 1.8 maybe. Once the whole facility's up and running, not the temporary thing.
Right.
But I mean, just that I believe would be the 12% to us, and the 12% to just off of the numbers they shared.
It's in the redevelopment plan too. I think the range was 1.5 to 2.5 was what we put in the redevelopment plan, and that is just the 12.5% that we will get. That is not sales tax increases or anything like that.
Lodging
The online
tax.
portion?
Right? No.
Does that
good.
include the online portion? What they do online? Because right now they don't have
Right.
anything in the state of Nebraska, but once they have a license,
I would
or
assume
a
once.
casino, then they are allowed to do online.
Any revenue is taxed according any
How
revenue.
do they track online? I mean,
It's their total revenue. The operation, they have to track that. They have to report that to the state. Right now,
But that would be broke out for the state then, and then we would get a portion of that?
Yes.
That's what I was asking.
Each facility has to report separately, and then they're remitted the 12. So we'll get 12.5%. The county will get 12.5%, and then the remainder stays at the state for various purposes.
Let's
Yeah.
go back to cash reserves real quickly.
Sure.
Where are our cash reserves today? And where do you expect them to be a year from today. Actually, the end of the fiscal year, end of next fiscal year.
We can put a spreadsheet together for that, but the only change would be what we're using of sales tax, or what we actually use of sales tax reserves, which maybe is around $1 million. I think worst case scenario, if our sales tax continues to perform like it has been. Historically though, we've always budgeted to spend about as much over sales tax as we have now, but sales tax has always kept growing, so our reserves have kept growing. Does that make sense? Then the other thing is the transfer out of the loop fund. So worst case scenario, a dip of under $2 million, but that is absolute worst case scenario. If sales tax plummets, we get no gaming revenue, and I mean that would take a pretty dire year, considering even during COVID our sales tax grew.
My question really boils down to what should our cash reserves be?
Yeah, Heather and I have talked a lot about this, and even when Ann was here, I talked to her about setting a policy on what cash reserves can be, and she sent me minutes of previous meetings, probably before a lot of you were here, of meetings where that was discussed, and the council did not want to set a policy about cash reserves. So the state limits how much cash reserves you can have, but also we are around 20% and would like to be between 20 and 25%. You really can't go much more than 25%, especially because a lot of our cash is restricted. Like, we're self-funded. So we have $3 million in our health insurance fund, but we cannot touch it for anything else. Well, that still counts in our spreadsheet. So to the state. So it is a fine line of where we have to be, but we don't want it to really change much at all. But absolute worst case scenario, and quite frankly, if we're in a budget and our sales tax is plummeting and all those things, we're going to be having conversations, and we're going to be pulling back on capital, you know, all of those things like we did during COVID. I think we did a 3 to 4 month kind of freeze on capital during COVID because we just didn't know what was going to happen with sales tax. So we would do something similar if we started seeing it going in a bad direction.
So you feel that our cash reserves will be adequate?
I
with this
believe they'll
transfer?
be at what they are now or greater this time next year, based on what we're looking at.
Okay.
Well, and I think the way that you try to set a conservative number for sales tax feeds right into the conversation you're having.
Right.
Because at least unless we have that extremely terrible year, we get that cushion because we've done better than what we've expected.
I look at the sales tax numbers that we're budgeting, and I see us being 15% under, our revenues being 15% greater than budget, and I wonder, is that ultra conservative? And my opinion is, yes, it is. So we need to be reasonable is my,
Right.
and I think we're being reasonable. We've increased our sales tax numbers, revenue numbers, and coming on. I don't think we've increased them quite enough, but that's me talking, and
Yeah.
keep after that. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And just to reiterate, we're planning for 8.5 of revenue, but we're budgeting to spend 10.8. So we're conservative on the revenues, but we're still attacking CIP as hard as I feel like we can attack it. Does that make, so the budget is absolute worst case scenario, right? If we lose $1 million of sales tax revenue, we can still do everything that's in the budget technically. Would we? Probably not.
I think what you're saying
But-
is we'd almost have to have 2 years in a row of bad sales
Really bad,
tax
really
to
bad.
affect
Mhm.
us
That's one-
changing our philosophy.
That's one thing, if you're gonna have one bad year, I guarantee you're not gonna have just one bad year. You know, they're gonna be, you know,
There's
one
potential.
right after the other until something can change and get it built back up. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, we've got a good history, and history has a tendency of repeating itself, so we will hope for that.
All right, are there any more questions or comments for Tara?
No, I think,
Well,
I think you've done a great job.
thank Amazon too, because without them,
Hey,
we
yeah,
wouldn't have
that's-
seen some of the increases
Oh,
that
yeah.
we've seen the last 2.5, 3 years.
Absolutely.
I just bought a.
Do that out of the kindness of their heart.
No, but it was nice that they did, that it got done.
Legislatures
I
do
just,
that.
I just bought a bed from Missouri, one of those, you know, reclining jobs and like that sort of thing, and, I paid my sales tax.
Yep, thank you.
All right, well, we need a motion to move this on to the city council meeting tonight, so I'd like to request someone to make that motion, please.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget the way it's presented, and please go ahead and vote. All right, and the motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, our next item then, Parks and Recreation. We have some survey results and some goals, so we'll let Betsy come up and
Okay, Betsy Eckhart with Parks and Recreation. This spring, as most of you know, we did a survey about the Parks and Recreation of Columbus as a whole. And so these are the survey results for that. When it came to usage of our park facilities, the top usage was our trails. People liked using them for biking for pleasure, and then also the Vanberg golf courses. The least amount of usage from our surveys were the horseshoes, adult leagues, and visual arts. And then we asked the question of how would you rate your neighborhood parks? And that includes like Air Vista, Airport, the little parks that are in each of your neighborhoods, like Hanover. Go ahead, Beth.
I have a
I'm
quick
sorry.
question. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
So when you say visual arts, what is that referring to in our parks, I guess?
Well, I think that is referring to like any of our statues or any of our murals or anything that visually would attract somebody to the park.
Got it.
For
All right.
that.
Yep. All right, thank you. For
No
that
problem.
clarification.
So in the question of how would you rate your neighborhood parks, which that's your little parks in your local neighborhoods, the ease of access to them was rated excellent, and our playground equipment was rated excellent. Most of these parks do not have bathroom facilities, so that is why they are ranked poor on there, but most of them do not have bathroom facilities. I would say Frontier and Glur are really more of your neighborhood parks that do. And then court conditions were rated second in that. And a lot of those courts are dual courts, so they're tennis and basketball. And if Doug, you want to jump in at any time on any of this, you can. So, okay. And then Bernie Square was one that we asked specifically on because it gets a lot of usage throughout the year from not only the Mariners Association, but other baseball, softball associations. And so excellent, it was rated that the ball fields and the light conditions were excellent. And poor were the restrooms in the concession stand, which they are pretty, if you've been down there, they are pretty old, but they're usable, so that's good. Bradshaw Park, again, the excellent is the lighting and the field conditions. Where they rated poor for Bradshaw was the ease of parking and the restrooms.
Betsy, did we try to break down at all when somebody said, I mean, if there's a restroom, what are they saying is not good? Is it cleanliness? Is it condition? Is it?
Overall
I mean,
condition is
okay.
what it was.
Okay.
So we didn't ask specifically about cleanliness. It was just overall condition. And when you have, it can kind of be skewed a little bit just because when you have large events like you do at a Bradshaw or a Girard, your community is going in there and using them when hundreds of people are going in and using them. So they might see, okay, it's not as clean as it should be in the middle of, several hundred people tournament. So that skews a little bit of it as well. Centennial Park, the lighting and the field conditions, again, restrooms and tennis courts. Frankfurt Square, people love the memorial conditions and the events that we are starting to hold there. Ironically, ease of parking was poor, but also the events that we hold there. So it fits part of the community and it doesn't fit another part of the community. Girard Park, again, the lighting and the field conditions were rated excellent. Restrooms and tennis courts, which tennis courts are on the capital plan this year. So hopefully that will be something, if we survey again in the next couple years, that will change with that. Glure Park, the splash pad and the location is considered excellent. And then the court conditions and the signage were considered poor. Wilderness Park, the concession stand field conditions, and poor. It was a tie between seating and lighting. There is no lighting out there because of its proximity to the airport.
Yeah, I don't think most of the community understands
Right.
the airport's location has an effect on how we could light those fields.
And to be able to pull that off, you have to go through several regulations with the airport, but then also you have to have special lights at special distances. It is a big money endeavor to be able to do something like that. It's definitely probably not out of the picture for a future project, but it's a hard one to do. And then seating, we have regular bleachers on some of the fields, but most people bring out their lawn chairs because they want to be in the specific spot where their child is playing. So it's not great necessarily if you have a grandparent that is wanting to come out and sit on the bleachers as opposed to bringing their lawn chair. And then the ease and access of parking. And we just have a lot of participation and there just isn't enough parking sometimes. And that's really the issue out at Wilderness Park. Okay, Pawnee Park, the location and the walking and running track is what people rated excellent. Poor is the winter ice skating and the sand volleyball courts. And I think that's just lack of awareness maybe and lack of usage. And then our trail system, what is excellent is the pleasant surroundings and the fact that our community feels safe while on our trails. Poor is the accessibility to businesses and services in the community, which also leads into the connectivity to other trails and sidewalks in town. And then we asked the community what their barriers to participating in Parks and Rec activities in the city are. Communication of upcoming events and offerings, which were pretty new. So that's finding the right communication streams is difficult sometimes, but you learn and you adapt with that. And then unaware of programs offered, adult leagues and programs offered, does not offer activities that interest me and they're at inconvenient times. So things that are non-barriers for the community, and this is also good to know when we're planning, that way we don't have to worry about, is transportation going to be an issue? Is childcare going to be an issue for an activity that we're going to do? So transportation is not an issue. ADA improvements are not an issue. Safety and security is not an issue. Childcare, and they do not think our programs are too expensive. So those are not barriers to somebody participating. Where are the biggest needs? So, from what the community says, our biggest needs are family activity programs, adult wellness programs, and family wellness programs. The lowest needs are adult rec programs, youth leagues, and sport camps. And then we ask them how in communication do they receive their information best. Social media was obviously the main way. Parks and Rec webpage, radio station, newspaper, and then we do send stuff out in school flyers. And so school flyers was rated 5th on that. Would adding an indoor rec facility to Columbus be beneficial? So 42.68% say that they would agree with that, and 5.57% say that they would disagree with that. What activities would be served at a rec center? The top results that they would want to see at that would be winter youth park programs, general rec like kickball, dodgeball, general event space, indoor youth programs, and a meeting space. So then we asked them, as the community, what would be your top park priorities? And they stated restrooms, maintenance, which is the upkeep of our current facilities, the trails, safety, and splash pads. And then we asked them what would be their top priorities that they are looking for in recreation. And so then that would be the trail connectivity to the community, youth programs, the plunge in the aquatic center, family activities in an indoor multipurpose space. So that is the results that we got from the spring survey. If you have any questions on that, I'll answer that before I move on to
How many
goals.
people did you get?
It was low. It was around 600 people. Yeah. Yep. So,
But to be statistically accurate in a community the size of Columbus,
That's pretty good.
you don't need many more than that.
yeah. Yep. And it's also a good number to let people know, because if somebody comes and says, well, why don't we have this? Or why are your goals set as this? Then you can say, well, when we do a survey next time, we'll make sure that you know. So with that, I just wanted to go through some goals that we have set as a department for that. When you work in Parks and Rec, you don't necessarily do things like everybody else. So you work in semesters. You have a winter summer semester, you have a fall semester, and you have a winter semester. And so you work just in 3 different semesters. And so we want to really look at what the survey said and how we can serve our community in those semesters for different seasons. So the one thing that they stated is that they wanted us to focus on trails. But as you guys know, trails is a much bigger picture thing than just Parks and Rec, especially when you're dealing with connectivity. So we went with the next top 3, which is youth programs, plunge and aquatic center, and family programming. So last year, just because of capability, we either did youth programming or family programming in a month, just to kind of serve one. If we did youth programs one month, we would do family the next. This year, we want to try to get 2 family programs, one which would be considered a dry program outside of the aquatic center or the Pawnee Plunge, and one that would be a wet program, which would be inside the aquatic center or the Pawnee Plunge. So we want to try to accomplish one of each for both dry and wet. And then we wanted to focus on the plunge and the aquatic center. So we have not had swimming lessons other than private swimming lessons in quite a bit of time. And so we needed to re-engage staff. We actually, so that they could get certified to teach swim lessons. We actually had 12 kids that were interested in teaching swim lessons, and 8 of them were able to complete the class that we offered. So since then, we have been able to open up 71 spots, or 71 individual group lessons. So that is, any group is 5 to 10 participants. Currently, since September 1st, we have 123 kids signed up to take swim lessons at the aquatic center. So that's a big increase from what we have historically seen in the past few years. And COVID did have some to do with that as well, because you would want a one-on-one as opposed to a big group, and now we're able to do big groups. But we're also focusing on doing family and youth events at the aquatic center as well. And so we're kind of rebranding the aquatic center a little bit. We're gonna do some corals classes, and some reefs, dive-in movies, and coral and reef are, just so you guys know, there are dolphins. If you drive by, you see the dolphins on the front. Those are the 2 dolphins. And so we are deciding to use the dolphins as a selling point to the kids for activities. Yep. So, but yeah, so those are our goals, is we're going to really work on focusing on what the community has told us that they want from us in recreation. And then when we feel like we need to, then we'll do another survey and get the community's opinion on where they want us to move next.
Are we competing with the YMCA when we should be co-oping with them?
In which way?
Well, swim lessons, for example.
Oh, there's never enough swim lessons in the community. And I have actually spoke with Corey Briggs on this because I don't want to take revenues away from them either. It's many of you know I come from the Y, so my heart goes with the Y. That's what I've known first and foremost in most of my adult career. And so I have talked to him about if we would be taking away from them. And there's just not enough different times, different age groups, different lessons available that meet our community's needs, especially since COVID. We've had so many kids since COVID that have missed out on taking swim lessons, and now they're getting older and they're getting farther behind in the programs. And so when we talked, he was perfectly okay with us opening up for group lessons and offering, being an additional place of offering. And having 71 class offerings, that's just different times and everything. That does not mean that all of them will get participation. It's giving the option so that in the future we can see, okay, this is the time slot that works best for most people. This was the popular time slot. So that we can adjust to that in the future as well.
My emphasis here is let's not be competing.
Correct.
Let's be co-oping with
Correct.
the Y and others so that we
Yep.
don't compete and
Yep.
we provide, all right.
And
Thank you.
specifically in the past, you know, we didn't share lifeguards or any of that, and we've gone away with that because we want our lifeguards to be able to do, if they can get hours at the YMCA, go ahead and become an employee of the YMCA and get your hours there. If you can get hours at the Pawnee Plunge, then YMCA lifeguards can come and apply at the Pawnee Plunge too. So we've been working with their aquatic staff pretty closely to co-op a lot of that stuff as well.
The question I had kind of follows along with print. When we start talking about a community rec center then, and activities that are available there, I mean, what is that going to be compared with? What kind of activities are available at the Y? And I have not been at the new Y, but I just remember when I was younger, many years ago, you could go to the Y on a Saturday night, and they had all the gym, the swimming, the weight room, and it was just all kinds of activities available.
Sure.
So what do you see is going to be the difference between what we offer and what the Y is going to have already?
I actually don't foresee us really having a need for a rec center, especially with the field house coming. I could be wrong, obviously, but if we did, it would be like an indoor playground type situation. The YMCA does not currently have that, and maybe like one court. And that one court would be multi-purpose. So it's something that you could set up for, you know, I do the youth sign-up days every spring. That's something where I could bring the vendors in and we can do a youth sign-up day. Kids can come and just shoot hoops and have fun if they want to. We can turn it into a meeting space. It can be where we hold on like rainy nights, a place for our bands that can't play in the square because of weather, or a movie that we can't hold in the square. We can move over to an indoor space. So, yeah.
Well, I think the other thing we've got to recognize, and I understand what Councilman Roth is talking about, we don't want to compete. We want to share where we can, but let's recognize the YMCA is a membership. Not all our citizens have a membership.
Understand.
And so there are things that our citizens expect that we may have to provide that a membership-only type facility, some of them don't have the ability to be there. So, I mean, that's part of what we've got to look at also. I mean, it's a fine line. I think we definitely want to walk it and do the best we can with it, but there will be things that probably you double up on. But we've got to remember, if you're paying for, I mean, the field house is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But you're going to be a member of the Y to use the field house.
Yeah. Yes. And there's a lot of people in our community where, you know, it is a lot cheaper to pay the $125 a year to go to the aquatic center than it and be able to have your kids in swim lessons and do some swim team stuff and have recreational swimming than it would be to have that full membership at the Y. So, but yes, I work very closely with the Y. I try to involve them in any of our community event activities that we do hold, and likewise them to us as well. So,
All right, gentlemen, any other comments or questions?
One other quickie question is, we talked about safety. And you indicated earlier that non-barriers to participation was safety and security, number 3. And then down on the, what do we need? Top park priorities, safety is an issue.
yeah.
Are those counterproductive? Are they?
It's hard to really find, just because of how the question was asked, why in one specific area they felt like safety we were really excelling in, but then in the exact same area later on in the survey, they're feeling like safety is something that we need to prioritize. So that's a hard one to answer, but it's definitely good to know that it's on the radar. I mean, especially when we're talking about swim lessons and aquatics, or even just lighting and stuff in our different facilities. Just knowing that people want to feel safe when they're participating in recreation and at the parks.
I think one thought that I had too is when I was looking at, when you were talking about needs with the restrooms and the maintenance. And, you know, I mean, I don't know how many people you have on your park department in the summer, Doug, but I mean, if you only have a few and it's their job to clean every restroom in every park.
Yep.
When you start looking at the cost, if that's a need, then we have to start looking at adding more staff or maintenance, or any of those things has to be included as we continue that.
Yep. Yep. And those of us that are out at the facilities during those tournaments and stuff, we do our best, you know, a couple times to go in and pick up and try to make it presentable, but it gets messy pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Becky, you just touched briefly on the ice skating at Pawnee Park. Is the city still involved with that?
We did one year. I'll let Doug answer.
Yeah, we,
You broke it.
Just talk loud.
Testing 1, 2.
we do still have ice skating down there. We get it ready. The issues we run into, we don't get a lot of participation. There's people who are very dedicated to it, but it might only be a handful. It's not like back in the 60s and 70s when
Yeah.
everybody in town ice skated. There's very few people who do. We run into issues too because the kids that we have down there, they tend to destroy the ice, throw rocks and boulders and things like that out in the middle of the ice, so we have to work around that. So we don't get a lot of participation, and it's not lighted anymore, so you have to
Right.
basically skate.
Is,
The last couple of years, nothing froze.
is
Yeah.
CPS still putting
I
that?
was gonna say, are
yeah,
you still involved with that
Is
at all?
CPS still putting the ice skating shed
They
building
yeah.
together?
It's up.
Yeah, it's up?
Yeah.
We filled it up for them.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because it was so dry,
We just couldn't,
and
Yeah.
then it would get warm, hot,
Yeah.
warm, hot.
Okay.
And, everything would go down, so we filled it up a couple of times, to have people, people went out and skated for a couple of days, then the weather would turn and they couldn't anymore.
Yeah, the weather did not make ice skating too well this year.
Not this year, no.
What kind of advertising did we do for the ice skating? We
If
left
any.
that up to the school since it's on their property, so we didn't really do a
I'm
whole
talking
lot.
about for us when we were doing it.
Oh, we just, we don't really.
Didn't do anything.
The year that we did it when I was employed, I did go and take pictures of the guys filling it up and did some social media stuff, but beyond that, we didn't advertise it hugely.
You know, with it being gone for a period of time, maybe people, you know, lost interest or
Yep.
forgot it was even there, out of sight, out of mind, and
Yep.
now that it's slowly trying to come back, maybe some
Yep. Yeah.
advertising would help.
And that's good things that we're learning, that's opening our eyes a little bit to what the community sees from the survey.
As,
One other thing we struggle with that ice skating is that a lot of people in our community live on lakes, so they skate on their lakes.
Yeah.
And people feel more comfortable to go to a lake like that to skate.
Well, that way they can go into the house where there's no shed here anymore. That's all gone.
Has there ever been any discussion about having an indoor ice rink? And the only reason I ask is I have family that live in Yankton, and they have an indoor ice rink, and it's used all year. And they have hockey and they have figure skating, and they are hosting competitions and hockey meets. And I don't know how much where we compare as far as sizes Yankton is, but I know it's really, really active. And I'm just thinking, I guess I'm just wondering, is that something that we would have or ever would consider? I'm just throwing it out there, so.
Yeah,
Just a
I
thought.
mean, that's always a good idea to look into those types of options and if it would be viable for us to be able to do.
Lots of money.
when I lived in Dodge City, they had an acrylic floor that they used for skating.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I know that when I was at the Y, we would take our kids during winter break programs, and we would go to the Fremont YMCA and ice skate for an entire day. And they had a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah.
I mean, and I think it would be great if we did have ice skating, an indoor rink, but ice skating is a lot like pools.
It's very expensive.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, unless there's any other comments, we do not need a motion for this, so unless there's any other discussion, meeting is adjourned.
Awesome summer, it's a nice summary, Betsy.
Yes.
Yes.
And Tara, thank you too, with all of the way you provided the information for the budget was really good. It made it really clear. So thank you, staff, for all of your work on that. All right, we'll be back in
40 minutes.
40 minutes.